Okay, welcome. Stock market technical analysis. We'll get right into it. I'm going to give you guys what I'm seeing in the markets this morning on this Friday. We're going to start out with tech, but before I get started, leave me a thumbs up. Keep that up. I really do appreciate you guys hitting that. Helps the channel. I don't know how YouTube algorithm works, but seems to help the channel. Okay, so start off here with the daily chart. We're going to look at, this is the tech sector, and we got this trend line right here. We just held support. Again, sell signal still intact. Nothing's changed on the bigger picture. So, you know, we can back test that trend line. We could run up and hit that trend line. That'd probably be around 338, 339. If we get up in that area, I think we're likely going to do a back test and make a new high. All right, I think that would be the likelihood, is make a new high, just a slightly new high on a back test with negative divergence. Let me roll out and show you the negative divergence on the RSI and the PPO. All right, that's a potential, and if that happens, that would be a very objective area to take a short position. And you have to realize that when you're breaking to new highs like that, if you're a lot of the retail traders that aren't looking at charts, aren't looking at trend lines, don't really realize how to read momentum or anything like that, they see an all-time new high, and the news media, they pump that NASDAQ just hit an all-time new high, and a lot of people that aren't paying attention get bullish in that moment, and that often can be the perfect moment for a short position, or for, if you're long, people to kind of do distribution. The institutions can distribute their shares into that bullish headline, basically, to the retail traders. So something to look for. I'm not saying that's going to happen, whether we get that full back test or not. I don't know, but watch for it if it shows up. As of right now, if I look at the hourly chart, we're kind of hanging out on this trend line, 327.67. That was former, that's a key level right here. You can see that when we gapped up and we broke above that level, and then when we came back down on the hourly chart, we hit it as support. It finally broke, and then it was resistance right here. So resistance, and we're back above it now. We're just kind of hanging out in that area. So something to watch for, if this breaks back down and you get selling into the close today, then that would signal that this was a false breakout and this truly was resistance. We're going to go lower. If we see that false breakout, I'd expect we're probably heading down to this 311 area. All right, so just things to watch for. If we hold, maybe we're going to run up and do that back test. So as of right now, I just don't know, is the honest truth. That's why I'm flat, the triple Qs. And what I'd likely do is take a short position if I see that false breakout. And otherwise, I'm looking probably to re-short triple Qs on that full back test up in this area. That would be a very objective area to short. All right, moving on to the SPY. SPY is almost going to do its full back test. You can see here on the March 2020 lows on this daily chart, I've got it marked in green. The trend line held support. We broke. There's your sell signal. We did one back test, and it looks like we're coming in for another one. Not quite there yet. We've got another, let's check the percentage. It's another 1% or so for a back test. So if this ramps up and hits that, and I don't think they're going to get there today, but maybe they'll get there in the next couple days, and it'll make that all-time new high, just slightly above these previous highs right here. Make a new high on a back test of a broken trend line. That would be an objective area to short. The divergence on the RSI would not be broken, and the divergence has been building in the PPO for a while now. It's a pretty long extended divergence, really going all the way back to June 2020. So again, big patterns, they take a while to play out, but it looks objective to short on a full back test, and especially if you get that slightly new high on that back test. That's the area where it's the most objective. Keep an eye on that. Otherwise, let's break it down to the hourly. On the hourly, really we had some support right here at about 411. Two dips below it. So far we've held and we're above it. I don't see anything on the hourly telling me that we're going to break down or anything. So I'd probably put a higher weighting on that back test running up and making that slightly new high. I don't know if that's going to happen today. Most likely not. So things to watch for on that one. And IWM, again, IWM has an even clearer trend line off the March 2020 lows. You've got held support here. We finally broke. There's your breakdown. We did one back test. They're coming. It looks like they want to do another one. All right, that's the thing about back testing trend lines. It can continue to kind of back test for a little while, but each tag of that trend line I view as an objective area to short because you're coming into major resistance. And when doing that, you'll also be coming into major resistance with divergence. So if you run up and make a new high, and IWM would have to really backtest for a while to make a new high, so I'm not so sure we're going to get that. But again, this negative divergence where momentum's been dropping off on this daily chart is signaling that this uptrend that you see right here was going to fail, and you got a break of support right here. So right now I'm viewing it as a sell the rip market. You know, when you rip into resistance, that's where you can short or sell your longs if you're long. And I am looking for lower prices heading down to 205 in the near future. Nothing's technically changed on this. Really for the last couple weeks, really nothing's technically changed. We still have the breakdown. We haven't recovered support. This chart's still broken, so I view it as a chart that's just kind of grinding around, and pretty soon the selling should show up and we'll start working our way lower. Okay, gold. I want to get to gold. I'm seeing a few things in gold and the gold miners that maybe is telling me we're going to get a small pullback in some of these miners. Gold, there's nothing really in gold bullion that is telling me weakness in gold. We're just trending up. We've broken out of the of this downward channel. Really, there's just nothing bearish about gold. Pretty overbought on the RSI. You know, gold's up here around 72 or so. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to get a pullback. You can become more overbought. One thing I want to point out, though, so in general, I don't see anything bearish on gold. I think that we're just likely going to continue in an uptrend, but you're going to get pullbacks along the way is really what I'm trying to say. It's healthy to, you run up, you have a pullback, you continue to run higher. So that's how it's going to go. Some things that I'm seeing here, like on Barrick Gold, I want to point out. If I look at the hourly, we're starting to get some negative divergence here on the hourly. So you can see, basically, here's your PPO right there. And on the RSI, it's slight divergence on the RSI on the hourly. So you can see here, see how the PPO, how you made a high peak right here and then a lower high right here. Well, then you go to price and look, you see you have a high and then you have a higher high in price, all right, on lower momentum. That's divergence, negative divergence. Momentum is diverging in a negative direction from price, all right? So it's just on the hourly, so it doesn't necessarily signal anything for a major correction, but I do have this uptrend line here on Barrick. Now, I only have two reactions, one here and one here. So it's not the cleanest trend line, but I'm thinking maybe what we'll get is a pullback to that trend line, establish another reaction, and verify that trend line. So that's kind of what I'm thinking is we're going to pull back down to here and hold. I do believe we'll hold. I do view this as a buying opportunity down in here somewhere, depending on when we get there. Dropping from where we're at, that's a drop of about 6%, 7% or so, depending on when we get to the trend line. I don't know the exact percentage, but that's what I'm seeing on that one, the potential to drop down to that trend line. Agnico Eagle, same, I think the same thing's really showing up. We're really, you can see here, yeah, that doesn't quite have negative divergence. You have a little bit right here showing up on the PPO, and it's slightly there on the RSI. So it's not extremely bearish in these miners, and in general, if you want to take a step back and you're really trying to just trend trade this and swing trade this, I still view the miners as bullish trend, but potential for a pullback to this potential trend line. All right, and then another one that I talked about, wheat and precious metals. Again, this one has more reactions, so we can verify this as a trend line right here. We've got reactions there, and all through here. Wheaton does not really have negative divergence on the hourly. But the other thing about these is we came into some resistance right here on the daily chart, some major resistance. And you can see here at 47, that was resistance here on Wheaton. Had a kind of a stall out period where we had a reaction. Then it broke above, and as I zoom in right here, it was support, all right, and then zooming in, it was resistance again. So you can see, I would expect that we'd get some sort of a reaction here because there's been reactions here in the past. Now we are getting a reaction as they zoom in. We're consolidating and kind of clustering right around here. So maybe we don't get that pullback, but something to keep an eye out for. There's the potential for a pullback. I'm viewing any pullback to this support line as a good area to add or continue to build a position or take a new position, I guess, if you haven't already taken one. Okay, let's look at Deere. So Deere reported earnings. They had bullish earnings or positive earnings. Technically, nothing's changed. I'm still short this thing. Here's the uptrend right here on Deere. And you had negative, zooming in, we had negative divergence, clear negative divergence, telling us that uptrend was likely going to end. I don't know why I have two trend lines here. Let me go ahead and just get rid of this one right here. And so there's your negative divergence. You look for a break of trend line support. We got the breakdown right here. Nice impulsive breakdown, little kickback rally. All right, so earnings is not doing anything but giving us a kickback rally. And in fact, we're running right into resistance right there at 366.55. You zoom in, that was support all through here. We broke earnings, popping us up to 366.55. That's an objective area to potentially add to a short position. So I'm probably going to go ahead and do that today. Another opportunity would be if you got the full back test. It could potentially rally up and do a back test of the trend line. I'm not so sure we're going to get that. I think we're likely going to hold here and get rejected. Continuing lower on our journey down to next level of support, about 318, 318.20 or so. And we'll just do a quick scan through some of these other trade ideas, tech stocks, momentum stocks. Tesla, you can see we're just selling off today. Nothing major, pretty much flat. Again, Tesla could rally or it could fall. It's at the moment here where we're kind of in the middle of the area. And what why I'm undecided on which way it's going to go in the short term is because here's your resistance level, this trend line right there, and your support is right there, and we're right in the middle. So we could back test or we could drop. In general, though, I still see this broken trend line. We have big negative divergence, and basically it still tells me that we are gonna go lower before we actually bounce. So I still think for the negative divergence and the break of this trend tells me we fall, you bounce a little, you fall, you trend down. All right, so I'm still looking for 460. Whether we bounce and do a back test and then drop, I don't know. So that's kind of what that one looks like. Lyft to me looks like it's trying to do a back test of the broken trend line. So I'm playing it for that. I think that, here's your trend line on Lyft on the daily. We had negative divergence right there. Let me get the right tool. And you basically broke your trend line right there. So that's your sell signal. That tells you, okay, time to short this thing. And it fell, they stepped in a little bit ahead of the 200-day moving average. And we're bouncing, so we could run up and do a back test of the trend line and then reject down. But we got this big gap down here right there that I think is likely going to get filled. So I think if we back test, that's an objective area to add to a short or take a new short, or we just reject right in this area and just continue trending lower. Either way, I still think we're going lower over the medium term. Square kind of selling off a little bit today. Down 2%, just kind of, continuing to what looks to be broken trend line support and a downtrend. Here's your trend line support right there. Negative divergence on both. You broke trend line support. We're consolidating. We're basically bear flagging. Here's your flag. Just kind of mark it out. It's something like this. This area is your flag, and then your flag pole is, you know, potentially here, and you get a move down, you know, all the way down to here. So I could see a move to 151 or potentially down to 135 as the next objective move down. In general, this still looks good to the downside. Snap bouncing up into this downward trend line right here. But the thing that you got to pay attention to on Snap is the bigger picture. Here's your uptrend coming off the March 2020 lows on this daily chart. All right, I can get rid of this one. But here's your uptrend line right there. At the top of that trend, we started to build negative divergence. So this was your divergent high right in here. See the lower momentum? And when you get that, you look for a break of trend. There's your break of trend right there. You break, you back test, you go lower. You know, we're kind of chopping around, but ultimately now we're starting to create this downtrend. So I've got it marked out here. This is your downtrend, which I think is the new trend. And we're up just kind of running into, you know, we could go a little higher and actually hit that trend line, or they might step in a little early and sell this thing down. But ultimately, I see this as downtrending. So I'm looking for a move now down to the 200-day moving average and the lower end of this trend line, down around 43, you know, let's say 43.80 or 44, somewhere right in there as the next kind of wave down. And another thing to look for is just continued downward. As we downtrend, we've got a big gap to fill. So I think we're likely going to continue to downtrend, come down, start to fill that gap. That's the trade right now, is a move down towards that gap. So it still looks good to the downside. Here's Boyd Gaming. Again, bear flagging. There's nothing changed. We've got the uptrend right there. A divergent high circled. There's your negative divergence. Break of trend, and now we're just bear flagging. So this basically projects us to move. There's your flag. It's not that big of a flag, but it projects us to move down to here. So I think we're likely going to roll over down to about 50.76 or 55.36. Still looks good. More downside in that one, I'm anticipating. Starbucks, here's your uptrend line in Starbucks right there on the daily. We have a divergent high right up in here. Break of trend, nice sell signal. See the breakdown, the big breakdown candle where it's just impulsive selling. And we're just kind of flagging out, chopping sideways. Yeah, we could run up and back test, or we could roll over. Again, back test would be an area to add to a short or take a new short. And but ultimately, I think we're heading all the way down here at 101.35. Still looks good to the downside. I covered that one already. Here's Winnebago selling off again today. So just continuing the downtrend. This was your uptrend coming off the March 2020 lows. Held support here, held support through here. We finally broke there, and then we broke down and we broke another support level right there at about 73.80. You can see that was major resistance through here. Then it was support, even support right here. Bounced off support. See that tag is support, and you bounced off of it, but you finally broke. And now that it's broke, we're heading down to the next level of support. We're getting close to that one, which I think is about 66.55, and the 200 days right below. So I think we're likely going to run down, hit the 200-day, probably bounce off of that, and that's looking good still. So that's still another 5% down. So the trade really, you know, if you entered it right here on the break of that, that's a 13% trade just down to the 200-day moving average. Not too bad. That might be an area to take profit on this one. And Toll Brothers, I talked about this one. I'm short this one. March 2020 low trend line. Held support right there and there. Finally broke. There's your sell signal. Back test and a rejection. So we're downtrending. You can see we're making lows. You bounce. Make a lower low. You bounce a lower high. We're just going to continue to probably trend down. This one, to me, looks like it's heading right down here to 50.50. So from where we're at now, that's still a drop of another 15%. Not the most objective area to short right here, but you're pretty close to the sell signal level. You're not too far off of it, maybe a percent or two. Okay, guys, that's really all I got for the morning video. We'll just keep an eye on everything. You can see I am noticing the Qs is starting to sell off a little bit. So we'll keep an eye on how far down that goes. But you can see so far getting back below that resistance or that support level right there at 327.60. So watch that level. And if this selling continues, then we're going to call this a false breakout right here. And we're likely going down to that 311 all the way down here. Maybe not today, but in the short term. So things to watch. All right, I'm going to get the video out and leave me a like. Check out the training course. That's in the link is in the description below. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.